Hi guys, FenixFire here with an NU battle against Mewthree from the Serbi chat room. He used various other nicknames as well, but I'll stick to this one for convenience sake, as this was the one he challenged me with. Once again, a rather long battle nearing 20 minutes, so let's get it going. My opponent leads off with Ariados, while I start with Hippopotas. Knowing Ariados usually means a baton pass team and is unable to learn Taunt or Encore, I'm free to set up Stealth Rocks, while the opposition switches out for Drift Blim. Spotting no leftovers, I can assume this is a choice carved Drift Blim, which will try to cripple me with Trick. Not packing a hard counter for Trick on this team, I decide to sacrifice Corsola, as it's the most offensively oriented of the bunch. As predicted, Drift Blim uses Trick and swaps Corsola's leftovers for a choice carve. Unsure what Drift Blim will want to try next, I stay in to scout its moves and deal damage while I'm at it. As Drift Blim goes for Calm Mind after Trick, I'm fearing it's trying to acquire boosts for one of its teammates by baton passing them. With Corsola still being slower despite the choice scarf and doing less damage than expected with my super effective stab Power Gem, I'm forced to switch in order to stave off a possible sweep. As I recall Corsola for Hippopotas so I might yawn my opponent's Pokemon to sleep, Mewthree opts to go for Baton Pass right after the first boost, thus passing the Calm Mind to one of its teammates, namely a Magmortar. Even though Magmortar is a fairly dangerous Pokemon, especially with a Calm Mind under its belt, Hippopotas is able to live the attack thanks to my lead's Focus Sash. With Hippopotas barely holding on, it strikes back at Magmortar with Earthquake. Having overcome Magmortar, the score drops to 6 versus 5. As my opponent sends in Leafeon, a UU Pokemon at the time of recording, I'm distraught to see the foe break the tier clause. With that being said, I leave Hippopotas in to explore Leafeon's set. As my adversary goes for Swords Dance, I command Hippopotas to use Yawn to force my opponent to switch or fall asleep the next turn. Not wanting his Pokemon to doze off just yet, my opponent uses Baton Pass to once again transfer the stats it gained to another Pokemon. As Piloswine takes front stage, Hippopotas slams the foe with Earthquake, dealing decent damage for such a little Pokemon. With the foe's Piloswine outspeeding and eliminating Hippopotas with an Earthquake of its own, the record evens out at 5 versus 5. As my rock and ground-based team faces a daunting foe, I send in my first physical wall, a Quagsire. Sporting little speed, Piloswine is able to outrun me and deal massive damage with a +2 stab Earthquake. Even though Quagsire is powerful enough to take a hit, my luck takes a turn for the worse, with Toxic missing its target. Because Quagsire is unable to take an additional hit, I swap my Pokemon out for Gligar, my second physical wall. With Gligar's secondary flying type permitting me to dodge the Earthquake, both of my Pokemon survive the assault. As I desperately need to stop Piloswine's rampage, I direct Gligar to use Toxic, even with the possibility Mewthree might carry Ice Shard. As I am able to badly poison my opponent, Piloswine retaliates with Ice Fang, knocking Gligar out cold. With another Pokemon down, the count dips to 4 versus 5. Packing nothing to counter the opposing powerhouse directly on my bulky team, I'm forced to stall it out until Toxic has run its course. As Credilli takes the field, I oblige it to protect itself, while Toxic continues to build up. Uncertain if my opponent would predict my switch and use Earthquake instead of Ice Fang, I exchange Credilli for Quagsire to test the waters. Seeing my opponent sticks to Ice Fang, I might be able to exploit that later on. As Piloswine claims another Pokemon, the score is lowered to 3 versus 5. Being able to switch Credilli back in for some more protect stalling, Piloswine is starting to take severe damage from the poison per turn, even with the leftovers in play. As I'm not physically defensive enough to take a +2 super effective Ice Fang, I switch in Corsola to resist the hit. Although Corsola is fairly bulky, it still inflicts a good amount of damage thanks to the sword stance. Even with Piloswine struggling against the venom, it's able to dish out one final earthquake to eliminate Corsola. Although Piloswine falls to the poison, it was able to eradicate 3 of my Pokémon, leaving me in a battered condition at 2 versus 4. Not wanting to reveal my last Pokémon just yet, I send out Credilli again while my adversary goes with Leafeon. As my foe tries to immobilize me with Yawn, I signal Credilli to use Toxic, but once again it fails to hit the enemy. As I can't risk either of my last 2 Pokémon to collapse on me, I recall Credilli and send in my last fighter, Armaldo. Mewthree on the other hand opts for Baton Pass. Even though Leafeon wasn't able to set up any boosts, Baton Pass allows my opponent to scout my move or my switch, permitting him to send in an appropriate counter. As my opponent sends in Ariados again, I might have a chance to take him by surprise. As most Ariados are used to set up Toxic Spikes or to trap the foe's Pokémon with Spiderweb, I'm free to start setting up curses with Armaldo, boosting both its physical attack and defense at the cost of speed. As predicted, Mewthree goes for Toxic Spikes, enabling me to set up an additional curse in the following turn. With Ariados completing the 2 layers of Toxic Spikes, Armaldo is able to get off a second curse. Figuring Ariados can't harm Armaldo, my opponent will probably try to force a switch by yawning me with Leafeon. Foreseeing said switch, I give Armaldo the order to attack with X-Scissor. As anticipated, Leafeon is sent in and is forced to take the full power of my attack. With Leafeon defeated, the score hits 2 versus 3. To replace his fallen Pokémon, Mewthree sends in Drifblim again. As Drifblim goes for Omnious Wind, I'm relieved to see that it only does a little bit of damage, thus allowing me to continue to curse up. Nevertheless, I must be careful that he doesn't gain and pass the boost he might acquire from Omnious Wind, as that could definitely spell my doom. As soon as the previous thought crossed my mind, the second Omnious Wind hits and triggers its secondary effect, providing my opponent's Drifblim with boosts to all of its stats. While Armaldo gets a 4th curse under its belt, I'm forced to go on the offensive if I wish to stop my opponent from overpowering me. Strangely enough, Mewthree decides to stay in after all and continues to use Omnious Wind. As X-Scissor is my only attacking move and with Drifblim resisting Bug 4 times, I'm only able to inflict a small amount of damage. Miraculously for me, my opponent decides to stay in for another turn and attack me with Omnious Wind again. As Armaldo is able to dish out another hit with X-Scissor, the Sandstorm is able to finish off Drifblim. As I put my fears of button passing those boosts to rest, I manage to bring the record back to 2 vs 2. With only 2 combatants left on either side, my opponent reveals his last Pokémon, an Entei, who starts launching off Fire Blasts right off the bat. Luckily for me, the Sandstorm permits me to cushion the blows. Even so, I do get cursed by a burn. Not wanting to give Entei any quarter, I press the attack with another X-Scissor, but with burn cutting my attack, Armaldo is unable to deal sufficient damage. With Armaldo badly wounded, it braces for impact. With HP going down and down, it finally stops at 29, allowing me to rest up and mend Armaldo back to full. As the opponent continues to utilize Fire Blast in hopes for a critical hit, I let Armaldo use Sleep Talk to continue the battle even when it's resting. Even though my opponent believes he can break through Armaldo eventually, Fire Blast is only a 4-hit KO, allowing me to constantly rest off the damage. Aside from that, Fire Blast only has limited PP, and with Armaldo's rare ability, Battle Armor, which protects me from critical hits, Mewthree will be unable to strike down Armaldo. As soon as my opponent catches wind of Battle Armor, he concedes defeat, ending the match in a 2 vs 2. That was the game for today. I hope you enjoyed it and feel free to like, comment and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more. Until next time, FenixFire signing out.